Asian literature initially, or Japanese literature initially, feels like something very far away. And the pandemic is a good example of something which very quickly affects everybody.
It also connects with this idea of unity in isolation, because in Hojoki we do have a picture of isolation. He decided to self-isolate and yet couldn't. In the end, he couldn't, right?
It's been really interesting to delve into the kind of massive timeline, which I think is a massive strength to J8, which is being able to explore right from kind of Heian literature all the way right down to kind of modern day literature being produced.
I personally really enjoyed studying sort of moving into the postmodern side of things, like Tawada Yoko and things like that, because I feel like the world today is so precarious and there's so much going on that it's difficult to really distill this essence almost into a literary movement.
For example, things like, you know, the world's first novel has come from Japan. That's you know, a clear indication of the fact that Japanese literature isn't like something completely standalone and totally irrelevant to the rest of the world.
I'll pick up later on when you said novel, but I'll pick that up later.
Oh, yeah.
To that, so I think it's a really good place to start in terms of kind of conceptualizing what we think of as literature and what we think of as, you know, something that might be national versus global, and there's a lot of that going into Japanese literature, I think.
Coming from a place reading sort of Western modern literature, pretty much with everything you read from there on, you're sort of looking for the hallmarks of a novel or of a book, and then sort of coming into pre-modern literature and seeing very different texts that are quite communal, in that you don't have a person reading alone, you have a group of people to which a story is performed, was something that I think took a little while for me to get used to. I actually found really interesting.
Yes, we certainly understood that there are many more modes of reading than just read a printed page, right?
It felt strange leaving Cambridge, I think, on that week, having read a lot of things about, you know, post-Fukushima, and then, you know, history ended with, well, and now there's the global pandemic, and I don't know how that's going to affect everything. And then to leave there and gradually sort of see everything change, it's just, I mean, certainly this is just it's going to impact a generation. There'll definitely be some literature related to this, but it's especially interesting in a place like Japan, where they were talking about like the lost generation and for, you know, things about hikikomori, and then even going past in literature there can be quite a lot that's sort of centered around one person and feelings of isolation. So I feel like it'll in many ways be going back to these universal themes.
I think a lot of people during the pandemic as well will have, not necessarily most people, but some will have sort of turned to writing as a way to sort of let off steam and express their emotions when they can't really talk to other people face to face and get that sort of resolution.
Japanese pre-modern literature is very interesting. It challenges the very idea of what literature is. You are confronted with a series of texts where you have to understand why they are written in this way that appears weird to us, but actually made perfect sense in the context it was created. And we train you to understand why it makes perfect sense. And that really allows you to rethink what is literature. We also read fun stories that cover all sorts of incredible materials. For example, here we have this very intriguing story of conjoined twins, and one is naughty and one is very good. And the whole story asks us to think about how evil and good can live within the same body. These books are also great when it comes to the materiality. Again, we are challenged with something we're not used to. Look at the binding here. It's very different from what we're used to. And that's part of what we do. These materials challenge our knowledge, our assumptions, and ask us to think differently.
I teach a class in which we really look at these texts from writers from Okinawa, Koreans, Ainu fiction, trans-border, so writing from Japanese-born writers who are writing in different languages, for example, and we're thinking by that stage about questions of translation. And of course, literature allows you to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. It gives you a nice insight into something. It brings to life experiences that you may be completely different to you. You might also find somebody within a literary text that seems very different on the surface, but actually you can relate to in very interesting ways.